The Arizona sun was already burning high when Daniel Keller spotted them, two figures huddled beneath a mesquite tree, skin cracked, lips white. They didn't speak when he approached. They couldn't. One was barely 16, the other older, maybe mid-20s, both wrapped in torn sleeves and dust. Daniel didn't hesitate. He brought water, cold, clean, and an old quilt from the back of his truck. "You're safe here," he said gently, helping them sit beneath the shade of his porch. He'd seen things like this before. Ranches along the southern border did, from time to time. But this felt different. The girl's eyes didn't show fear. They showed exhaustion. Gratitude. A kind of silent plea. He gave them food too, and a place to rest. By late afternoon, they had names again. By early evening, patrol trucks lined his driveway. The knock at the door wasn't a thank you, it was an arrest. Daniel barely had time to stand when the deputy stepped inside without invitation. "Daniel Keller, you are under investigation for aiding and abetting unlawful entry," the officer said, voice clipped. "You have the right to remain silent." Daniel blinked. "I gave them water. A blanket. And you harbored them," the deputy snapped, motioning toward the porch. The girl and young man were gone, taken quietly, without a word, their footprints still fresh in the dust. Daniel's wife, Miriam, watched from the hallway, hands trembling. "They were dying," she whispered. The officer didn't care. Within minutes, Daniel's wrists were cuffed, and he was placed in the back of a patrol vehicle. But it wasn't the metal or the accusation that unsettled him, it was the look in the officer's eyes. Cold. Certain. As if compassion had become contraband. And as the truck pulled away, Daniel realized, this wasn't just about law. It was about silence. At the courthouse, Daniel was led through the back entrance, no cameras, no reporters. The hall smelled like waxed linoleum and stale air. A court-appointed attorney met him in a windowless room, her voice low and tired. "They're charging you under State Code 27.9, unlawful humanitarian interference." Daniel's brow furrowed. "That's not real." She looked at him, eyes heavy. "It is now." Outside, the sun was setting in streaks of red, casting long shadows through the courthouse blinds. In the distance, Miriam sat alone in the gallery, clutching the only thing Daniel had left behind, the blanket. The same one now marked as evidence. As the judge entered, the room stood still, except for Daniel's heartbeat, steady and unwavering. Whatever this was, it went beyond border laws or protocol. This was about a message. And Daniel, once just a rancher with kindness in his hands, was now its first lesson. Word of Daniel's arrest spread fast, first through whispered calls between ranch families, then across community bulletin boards and local Facebook groups. Some were stunned. Others weren't. "They've been looking for someone to make an example of," muttered old Pete from the feed store. "They just picked the wrong damn man." But the sheriff's office released no statements. No press. No mugshot. Just silence. Miriam stayed quiet too, until she received an anonymous envelope. Inside, a photo. Grainy. Night vision. It showed the girl Daniel helped, bound, blindfolded, being led into an unmarked van by men not wearing badges. No case number. No agency name. Just a timestamp, 2 hours after Daniel's arrest. Miriam's hands shook. She drove to the church, where candles flickered for border deaths and lost names. She lit one for the girl. And then one for Daniel, not because he was lost, but because something bigger had just begun. That night, Miriam uploaded the photo to a private forum once used by aid workers and ex-border medics. Within hours, replies flooded in. "I've seen those vans. They took my cousin. Never heard from him again." One message stood out, "That girl's name is Ana Lucia. She disappeared near Nogales 2 months ago. She wasn't supposed to make it this far. Miriam stared at the screen. Her hands moved before her fear could stop them. She saved every thread, printed every name, and made copies. She wasn't sure who to trust anymore, but she knew one thing: Daniel wasn't the criminal here. He was the witness. And someone wanted him buried beneath bureaucracy and dust. The next morning, her tires had been slashed. Her mailbox ripped from its post. But taped to the front door was a note scrawled in uneven English: "Stop looking. Or you'll join her." Miriam didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the floorboards made her flinch, every passing headlight had her reaching for the curtains. But fear, oddly, had begun to shift into something sharper: resolve. At dawn, she visited the only person she trusted beyond Daniel, Father Emile, the town's retired priest, once an immigration advocate before politics silenced his pulpit. She showed him the photo, the note, the slashed tires. He nodded slowly. "They're not after your voice, Miriam. They're after your silence." He led her down to the church basement, where boxes of old case files, reports, and transcripts lay covered in dust. "We were building something once," he said, "but we got tired. Maybe it's time to start again." She picked up a folder marked, "Unidentified Minors, 2014 to 2019. Her fingers tightened. They took Ana Lucia's name once. Miriam wouldn't let them take her story too. The folders were brittle with time, but inside, the ink still bled urgency: photos of children, transcripts of intercepted calls, testimonies from border nurses who'd vanished weeks after filing reports. Miriam sat cross-legged on the cold basement floor, surrounded by names erased from official memory. One file stopped her cold. A grainy picture of a boy named Luis, last seen at a makeshift checkpoint, with a note scribbled in red pen: "Too old to pass as minor, redirected to private contract." The date: 4 years ago. She matched the contract code with a shipping company she recognized, its logo stamped faintly on the van from Ana Lucia's photo. "They're not just deporting," Miriam whispered. "They're disappearing them." Father Emile leaned in, grim. "We once thought it was negligence. Now I'm not so sure it's not design." Miriam stood, fire in her chest. Daniel hadn't broken the law. He'd exposed the system built to bury it. Miriam returned home just before dusk. Her front door was ajar. Inside, drawers had been rifled through, papers scattered. But nothing was taken, except the original photo of Ana Lucia. They weren't thieves. They were sending a message. She moved swiftly, retrieving the USB backups she'd hidden in the old coffee tin beneath the floorboards. Then her phone buzzed, an encrypted message from an unknown number: "We've seen what you've posted. You're not alone. Meet us." A GPS pin dropped on her screen: an abandoned rail depot 10 miles out. Miriam hesitated, heart pounding. Was it a trap? Or the beginning of something larger? In the silence, she heard Daniel's voice in memory: "The line between danger and justice is often just a fence. Cross it anyway." She grabbed her coat, tucked the flash drive inside, and drove into the dark, toward answers, or maybe toward the people still brave enough to ask. The depot was nothing but rusted steel and wind-whipped silence. Miriam stepped inside, her footsteps echoing against the empty rails. Then, from the shadows, a soft click: flashlight. 3 figures emerged. Not law enforcement. Not journalists. Civilians, but sharp-eyed. One wore a medic patch. Another held a satellite laptop. The third simply nodded and said, "You're Miriam. We've been watching too." They called themselves The Chain, a loose network of former aid workers, exporter agents, and whistleblowers who'd gone underground. One handed her a file. Private contractors. Fake deportation routes. The vans don't go to processing centers, they go dark. Inside the folder was a list: names, dates, coordinates. And Daniel's name was on it too. He was flagged months ago, the medic whispered. They were waiting for a reason. Miriam's pulse pounded. This wasn't just a story. It was a system. And now, she had the blueprint. Miriam returned home just before sunrise, eyes red but steady. She hadn't slept, not really, only thought, planned. She pinned the map of van routes to the kitchen wall, circling towns with temporary processing centers that didn't appear on any public database. In the silence, she realized how far this had gone, and how close it had always been. A town over. A field away. Daniel wasn't just arrested, he was flagged, tracked, and chosen. But for what? Retribution? Warning? Or both? She gathered the documents, made digital backups, and wrote one name at the top: Ana Lucia. If she was alive, Miriam would find her. If not, Miriam would still speak her name until someone listened. She didn't ask permission. She didn't wait for a court date. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't reacting, she was leading. And outside, the desert wind began to shift. At noon, Miriam parked outside a nondescript warehouse listed as Southwest Storage Solutions. It had no signage, no trucks, no deliveries. Just high fences and a camera that tilted half a second too late. This location had appeared 3 times in the files from the chain, always as a destination, never a departure point. She walked the perimeter, snapping photos, noting license plates. Then she spotted it, a red thread caught on the fence, barely visible. Fabric. Kid-sized. Her breath caught. Before she could pocket it, a voice called out. "Can I help you, ma'am?" A man in a crisp button-down, no badge. Too polite. Too early. Miriam forced a smile. Just lost. Looking for Unit 14. He nodded, but his eyes scanned her too closely. She left slowly, heart hammering. Behind her, the gate clicked shut. Whatever was inside that building, someone was watching it very, very carefully. That night, under a moonless sky, Miriam returned, this time through the back trail mapped by the chain. Bolt cutters. Dark clothes. No headlights. The storage yard was silent, the air too still. She reached the fence, slipped through, and crept toward the far row, Unit 47. Her pulse pounded. Inside, the unit was empty, at first glance. But in the back corner, beneath discarded tarps and crates, she found a cot. A water bottle. And a small plastic bracelet with faded letters, ANAL. Her hands trembled as she lifted it. Proof. Not just of presence, but of detainment. A door slammed somewhere in the distance. Voices. Miriam backed into the shadows, clutching the bracelet to her chest. She couldn't be caught, not yet. Not with this. She slipped out as headlights passed just inches from her body. Ana Lucia had been there. And someone had gone to great lengths to hide it. By morning, the bracelet photo was online, shared first in a closed group, then reposted across whistleblower channels, migrant advocacy forums, and finally, local news. Miriam kept her identity hidden, but the image spread fast, a child's name on a forgotten cot, deep inside a storage unit no child should have ever seen. Some called it a hoax. Others called it evidence. But for a growing few, it was something else entirely, a spark. Families who'd been silenced began speaking up. My nephew vanished in custody. My sister sent a voice message, then nothing. The church where Father Emile preached began filling again, not with sermons, but testimonies. And at the center of it, Miriam watched from the back pew, eyes sharp, jaw clenched. She hadn't planned to become the face of this. But the silence had lasted too long. And if no one else would stand up, she would. 3 days later, Miriam received a letter, no return address, just a single sentence typed on a blank page: "If the bracelet goes viral, your husband disappears for good." She burned it. The threat only confirmed what she suspected: they were watching everything, and they were scared. But so was she, of what might happen if she stopped. That night, the chain activated silent allies. A former immigration officer leaked outdated transport routes. A nurse forwarded clinic records showing undocumented children treated off the books. Names began to resurface. The bracelet became a symbol, Ana Lucia, a name whispered at vigils and printed on flyers taped to courthouse walls. Meanwhile, Daniel's court date kept shifting, delayed, postponed, refiled under new judges. They were trying to wear him down through paperwork and time. But Miriam knew now, they weren't just fighting for him anymore. They were unearthing something designed to never be found. On the day Daniel was due back in court, Miriam arrived early, with a folder in her bag and fire in her chest. Outside, dozens had gathered in silence. No chants. No signs. Just faces, holding flyers with Ana Lucia's name. A quiet resistance. As Daniel was led in, shackled but standing tall, he caught Miriam's eye. She gave the smallest nod. He understood. Inside, the judge began reading procedural motions, but Miriam stood. "Your Honor," she said clearly, "this court is complicit in hiding more than trespass." She laid down the folder: photos, timestamps, names, proof. Audible gasps. The prosecutor fumbled. The judge went pale. She wasn't supposed to have this. But she did. And she wasn't alone anymore. Outside, a journalist live-streamed the hearing. By sunset, the name Ana Lucia trended worldwide. And for the first time, the system flinched. The courthouse steps, once deserted, were now flooded with reporters. Microphones chased every official. Questions rang out, sharp, unrelenting. Is the department aware of the holding units? What oversight exists for privately contracted transport? Inside, the judge had called for recess, visibly shaken. The file Miriam submitted was now under federal review. And Daniel, still in custody, was suddenly being treated like a liability instead of a criminal. That night, a news anchor led with 5 simple words: the bracelet that broke silence. Miriam sat in her kitchen, hands around a cup of tea gone cold, listening. She didn't smile. Not yet. Because Ana Lucia was still missing. And the footage, it wasn't enough. It proved harm, not survival. But it shifted the wind. It bought them time. And in systems built on shadows, even one sliver of daylight can burn. That night, the chain convened in a remote farmhouse, its windows blacked out, cell phones left outside. They replayed the surveillance footage frame by frame, searching for clues, company logos, markings, faces. One man paused the video. "That logo," he whispered, pointing to a crate behind Ana Lucia. "It's from an airfield, private. Used for crop dusting, but the registry was scrubbed last year." Within minutes, coordinates were found, just 40 miles from where Miriam had discovered the bracelet. A pattern emerged: children moved from vans to holding units, then flown out before public records caught up. "They're trafficking, not deporting," someone said grimly. Miriam felt bile rise in her throat. It was bigger than anyone imagined. "We have to get her out," she said. Silence followed. Then Father Emile added, "Not just her. All of them." And for the first time, they weren't just exposing the system, they were preparing to dismantle it. The plan had to be precise: no authorities, no delays, no second chances. At dawn, Miriam drove toward the airstrip disguised as a fuel technician, badge forged by a retired federal printer now working with the chain. Over her earpiece, calm voices relayed coordinates and heat signatures. Hangar 3. 2 guards. One vehicle warming up. Inside the van, hidden beneath blankets, lay rescue gear, first aid kits, and burner phones preloaded with safe contacts. Miriam gripped the wheel tighter. She wasn't a soldier. She was a teacher, a wife, but now, she was something else, a witness with teeth. As the chain-link fence approached, she exhaled. This wasn't about going viral. This was about bringing someone home. Behind her, 3 backup cars waited, lights off, engines cold. If Ana Lucia was inside that hangar, they had one shot. Miriam whispered to herself, "We don't ask permission anymore." And then she stepped on the gas. The gate cracked under the van's force, metal shrieking as Miriam barreled through. Gravel sprayed. Lights burst on. 2 guards shouted, guns half-raised, but before they could fire, the chain's team flanked from both sides, non-lethal flash rounds lit the yard, and silence followed. Miriam ran, breath shallow, toward Hangar 3. She kicked the door once, twice, it gave way. Inside, cold fluorescent light hummed over rows of cots. Only one was occupied. A girl, too still, too thin. Miriam knelt beside her. "Ana Lucia?" The girl's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, confusion. Then, recognition. "Your bracelet," Miriam whispered, holding it up. A flicker of something, hope, returned to the girl's face. Footsteps echoed outside. No time. Miriam scooped her up, heart thundering. As she turned, Ana Lucia murmured, "There's more, behind the wall." Miriam froze. This wasn't a rescue. It was a beginning. Miriam turned toward the far wall, a sheet of corrugated metal, slightly warped at one edge. She set Ana Lucia down gently and pulled at the corner. It creaked open, revealing a hidden corridor, narrow and dim. Inside, rows of plastic crates, each marked only by dates and numbers. But what made Miriam's stomach turn were the sounds, muffled breaths. She opened the nearest crate. Inside wasn't cargo. It was a child. Alive, groggy, sedated. Another crate. Another child. At least 7. They were being stored, she whispered, horrified. Ana Lucia stood beside her now, eyes wide but clear. "Some of us, they said we were going north, but the trucks turned around." Over her earpiece, the chain called out, "Extraction window closing. You need to move." Miriam radioed back. "We're not leaving with one. We're leaving with all of them." And for the first time, she heard her own voice tremble, not from fear, but from fury. With no time to spare, the chain moved like a silent storm. One by one, children were lifted from the crates, some limp, others barely conscious. Miriam wrapped each in thermal blankets, whispering names the system had stolen. "You're safe now. You're seen." Outside, tires screeched, reinforcements were coming. 2 minutes, a voice shouted through her earpiece. As the last child was carried out, Ana Lucia tugged Miriam's sleeve. "There's a ledger. Names. Places." She pointed to a steel cabinet in the corner. Miriam ran, tore it open. Inside, binders labeled by year, filled with intake photos, medical notes, transport destinations. Not just children here, hundreds, across state lines. It was the smoking gun. She grabbed the files, shoved them into her pack, and ran as the first spotlight hit the hangar. Behind her, sirens. Ahead, headlights from their getaway cars. And between them all, truth finally too big to bury. By dawn, the children were safe, hidden in a secure safehouse run by pediatric volunteers and legal advocates. Ana Lucia slept under clean sheets for the first time in months. Miriam sat nearby, her hands still shaking, the files she'd taken now duplicated and encrypted by the chain. That morning, every major news outlet received a timed email with the contents, footage, photos, scanned ledgers. It exploded. Private trafficking operation linked to immigration contractors. Unauthorized child holding units exposed. Within hours, state officials denied knowledge, federal agencies launched investigations, and a sitting senator demanded hearings. But Miriam wasn't watching the news. She stood beside Daniel, finally freed that morning, charges dropped quietly, without apology. His eyes held hers. "You didn't just save me," he said softly. She shook her head. "We saved each other." Outside, the sky was clear. Not quiet, but full of voices finally being heard. In towns across the Southwest, candlelight vigils lit up courthouse steps and churchyards. Names once whispered in fear were now spoken aloud: Ana Lucia, Luis, Mateo, and dozens more. Volunteers organized reunification teams, legal aid flooded in, and the missing finally had faces again. Miriam and Daniel returned to their ranch, now surrounded not by silence, but solidarity. Neighbors left warm meals at their door. Strangers sent letters from across the country. "You reminded us to look again." Father Emile reopened his chapel, not for sermons, but for listening circles. The children rescued from the airstrip began to speak, little by little. Drawings appeared on the safe house walls, sunrises, birds, names. Miriam hung Ana Lucia's bracelet in a frame above the fireplace, no longer a symbol of sorrow, but of survival. Because sometimes, the smallest act, a cup of water, a warm blanket, can ripple far enough to wake a. Weeks later, Miriam stood on a quiet stage at a community hall, Ana Lucia beside her, holding her hand. Cameras flashed, but Miriam didn't speak for headlines. She spoke for names still missing. "We didn't set out to fight a system. We only refused to look away." The crowd listened in silence, some weeping, others holding photos of loved ones who'd vanished in legal limbo. "The line between help and harm is thinner than you think," she continued. "But every act of kindness matters. Every witness counts." She looked down at Ana Lucia, now smiling softly. "If you've ever wondered what difference one person can make, look again. And to you, reading this now, raise your voice. Ask questions. Share their names. Because sometimes, the world doesn't change with noise. It changes when ordinary people choose not to stay silent."